Welcome to the Garden Like a Guru show, and this is your host, Tyhson Banighen, a permaculture instructor, and the one and only garden guru, Sarah Bradshaw, for our first show. This is going to be a year-long show, and we're going to be coming to you through the whole season of preparing for your garden all the way through to the final harvest. So I'm really excited to do this. It's been one of my dreams, and I know it's been Sarah's dream too, to actually help everybody do this. So wherever you are and wherever you want to garden, it could be on your balcony, it could be in your living room, it could be outdoors, it could be a farm, it could be a garden, it could be even like people were saying, well, I don't have a garden. We can even help you maybe do a little bit of gardening in the forest, or actually doing all sorts of different ways of being able to put food on your table. Anyway, welcome to the show, Sarah Bradshaw. She's been doing this gardening for many, many years. I think it's 30 plus years. So Sarah, how long have you been doing this gardening?
Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by how long have I been gardening, because of course my mom was a huge gardener. I grew up on farms and acreages, and we had a large family. So I grew up with the kind of acre garden that people think of, kind of the mini farm idea with all the nice long straight rows and, everything laid out. And I learned a lot from my mom, but I ventured out into sort of my own gardening experiences when I was 17, and that's coming up to 50 years now. And my divergence was into growing my own medicinal herbs. And what that led to was me planting edible burdock in my mother's garden.
Well, that didn't go over well.
That's an understatement. It did not go over well. I had no idea that edible burdock were those burr bushes with many adjectives in front of them. But I moved from BC here, where I grew up, to Alberta, and it was quite. I became aware of gardening people who were my gurus, like Ruth Stout, who.
Oh wow, yeah, Ruth Stout was amazing.
The Queen of Mulch, and yeah, I think I was all of 21 or 22 when I read how to have a green thumb without an aching back.
Right.
And Ruth was in her 60s or 70s then, and now that I'm that old, it doesn't feel that old. But at any rate, I thought, wow, somebody with this age and experience, I'm going to listen up. So I put her on the shelf beside Scott and Helen Nearing, who, of course, were the look after yourselves sustainable homestead guru of the era. And
well, you're bringing back lots of memories.
Yeah, I go back a ways. I go back there a bit. And I learned when I was young, I learned to reach back even further, because we were in that whole green it up, the whole green revolution that was going on, where combines were getting bigger and farms were getting massive, and companies were taking over all of it. And you didn't have to know how to do that, because you could outsource it. And why grow it when you can buy it? And, so current knowledge was kind of scarce and hard to come by. And, but then I also studied Riot, who really did turn me on to a lot of the astrological gardening. Around to all of it was my affection for Rudolf Steiner, who I came to through the Waldorf School and the Anthroposophy, and found out, bam, here he is in the middle of, agriculture as well.
Right.
Yeah, so it was a real divergence from what I had grown up with. Rows and rows and rows of rototilled land became contained areas of soil built on top of the ground. Sprays and insecticides were replaced with beneficial bugs and companion planting, and ways that I could keep the food safe for my children and myself and my animals, as that's what I wanted to do. my first husband was a beekeeper, the concept of putting insecticide on anything in an apiary
Right.
environment is just like, it's a no-brainer that you're not going to go. So, I slowly over the years did a lot of home gardening, really focused on the herbs. I ventured into home birth and midwifery and herbology. And so the gardening kind of carried through with all of that. As a herbalist, I didn't go to a food store. I wanted my feverfew to look like feverfew, even when it was dried. So that became important. And then in my 40s, I took advantage of a government sponsored retraining program and actually got a diploma in horticulture landscape design. And that was lovely. But when I combined those, I came back to BC in the mid 90s. And when I combined that, my career as a social worker with all of this hard won knowledge and now the certification, I really found a lot of my work was doing outdoor projects with young people where I was combining both sets of skills. I was using all of my counseling skills, but I was also teaching them all these techniques. It didn't take.
I remember being part of that.
Absolutely. The community garden in Salmon Arm and Turtle Island Earth Stewards, go Tyhs,
Yeah, right here. So,
Yeah, got it. And and it was an exciting time to be realized that the gardening actually mattered more than any of this other stuff I'd been doing. It all came back to the garden.
yes.
Whether I was looking for good medicines, the garden. Was I looking for good food? The garden. Was I looking for work skills and experience for these young people? The garden. Was I looking for something they could win at and feel good about? The garden. One of the most moving experiences of my life as a counselor was when a young man who'd had a fair few brushes and a rather rough time came in from taking a bunch of produce to a food giveaway, and he was literally all aglow. And I was, "What's up?" And he was like, "Those church ladies love me. They like me." And I was, "Well, yeah, sure they do." And he goes, "No, no, no. Mrs. Braby kissed me on the cheek and told me I was a nice young man. And I don't think anybody that was as rich as her or was as important as would ever like a guy like me. And they like me. They meant it." And, this was probably this young man's something like that. He'd
Right.
see mom stand in line for hampers. He'd been on the end of knowing how important the food bank is. But this time he was the hero. He was walking in with the buckets full of fresh vegetables. And well, he's doing very well. It's a great gratification to me to bump into him or other members of his family and see just how well he's doing. And, again, the answer was the garden. What he brought to the table, he brought from the garden. And so, I really, in my, since I've turned 50, the garden and the garden knowledge has become even more important to me. The necessity to keep our food safe from genetic modification, from splicing in of poisons, to keep the right to grow our own food, which is being challenged. Yeah. Isn't that nuts that they're challenging that?
Yeah. So let's give everybody a bit of a background of how I came to gardening too.
Yeah.
Just, what am I doing here? If the garden guru is here and she knows all this, well, then why does she need a co-host? Well, my background starts because I grew up with the Doukhobors, and the Doukhobors are some of the most amazing gardeners on the planet. And so for me, dinner was Mrs. Waldy, which I was their adopted fifth son. would say, take the wheelbarrow up the road and pick up the vegetables for dinner. So we would take the wheelbarrow up and we get fresh milk, fresh butter, and all the vegetables that we'd bring back for dinner. And then Mrs. Waldy would make the dinner. We ate directly from the garden behind us, which was, I don't know, it must have been a good 2 to 3 acre garden with dairy cows and whatnot. So that's how close my food production was. It was literally up the alleyway. So that really got me excited about the independence. And then also traveling through Utoshania, that was as the end of the whole back to the land movement of the Doukhobors. I could still see the tail end of what that culture was like when they lived in the longhouse, in the houses, communal houses. I got to learn how they, yeah, amazing. And my dad did me a favor when we were Rover Scouts. He put us on our quest to go all throughout Utoshania and go to all the villages that still existed and interview all the Doukhobor people. So I got a real feel for how the communal movement worked, how they made decisions, how they laid out, and it was like permaculture, how they laid out the structure. There was a communal house decisions, how they laid out, and it was like permaculture, how they laid out the structure. There was a communal house, and then there was, this one was the food garden, and then there was the chickens, and and then they went all the way out to the orchard. So everything was in a circle. It was easy to reach. Yeah, so that was a big part of my growing up. And the next time I sort of ended up in gardening was running a youth hostel on the side of the Trans-Canada Highway. We used to jokingly say 7 miles beyond hope in more ways than one. We had about 175,000 young people through our front door over a 7-year period. And we grew about an acre garden organic and fed everybody vegetarian meals. And we'd have anybody in, I think the most we ever fed at one time was 100 people, 120 people. So the food production there was really important. And the food that was produced there, that's what determined the garden. That's what the cooks would cook. So the cook would get the mandate from the garden saying, what you're going to be cooking tonight is, and he would lay out the vegetables that would arrive from the garden. So we ate very much from what was in season. So that was our experience of feeding a number of people and actually having a crew in the garden. And Yancey was a gardener, and you didn't get into that garden unless you had a certain vibe about you. You didn't let anybody mess in the garden unless they were really interested. So it was like a training program. From there, I became a permaculture instructor and did courses all over. I've done courses in Mexico. I've sent young people to Nicaragua. And we did some work there with the Mosquito Indians and setting up permaculture. We did some permaculture in Ecuador. So a lot of experience in sending young people to help work with Indigenous people to have food security. And then, I've had a little garden here, and I'm so excited about working with Sarah because this gets me out from behind my computer. My commitment this year is I am the gardener because my lovely Sarah has passed on. She was the chief gardener and I've inherited it. And like this morning, I had to remember to go water the greenhouse. Her list is now my list. So I'm excited to get this garden underway and we're getting ready to do that. So what's the first thing we can expect, Sarah, as we get ready for this whole rotation of preparing for the garden? What's coming up?
Well, the first thing I think you really need to pay attention to and be aware of is that gardens work best when you work with the rhythms, the natural rhythms that are around us. So I know you're big into sacred geometry and geomancy yourself. And the first place that you really have to start in the garden is the planning of the garden. If you don't plan before you plant, you're going to have one of several garden disasters, okay? You're going to have the wrong things to plant. You're going to have the wrong quantities of stuff to plant. And we've all seen this, You throw in the entire package of kohlrabi seeds into 2 rows, and it dawns on you long about late August that what the hell are you going to do with 300 kohlrabi, you know?
Right.
So, you know, the super crucial, because even before you go and acquire new seeds and new plants, you need to know, what do you have on time? What actually grows in your region well? What's worth taking your time to grow? If you really seriously love tomatoes, then grow tomatoes. You know, like, don't grow the things that your mom grew or that everybody grows because that's what you grow in a garden. My mom grew up on the prairies, and even though she'd relocated to BC, where the opportunities and choices were myriad,
Mm.
every year she planted her scarlet runner beans, her homesteader green peas, her golden bantam corn, and her cabbages. And, you know, that's great on the prairies where the heat that real good green beans aren't going to get it in Moose Jaw, but they are
Right.
going to get it here. I grow scarlet runner beans, I really do, but I eat the beans in wintertime in my chilies and soups. And I love that they attract and feed all the hummingbirds and the pollinators and the butterflies. And they make a great cover. They make a terrific teepee for a kid, a great screen for a sunny porch that, you know, you want a little bit of shade on. They are the most unremarkable green bean on the planet to eat. They're terrible. But my mom grew them every year because that what she was. The same with homesteader peas. I mean, they're great. They'll grow anywhere. They're called homesteader peas. They were grown by people coming out, never having gardened before. You know, they came up quick. They were okay. But taste wise, they don't come close to a dwarf green arrow or a little marvel or something that you can grow in this zone. So, you know, that's the first thing, is look at what you eat. And you mentioned eating right from the garden, which is how I grew up too. And it is so fabulous when it's fresh and it's good. So eat what you grow and grow what you eat, you
Right.
know? Like, don't grow a whole lot of cabbage if you don't like cabbage, you know? So that's the first part, you know? And then once you do some planning and figuring that out, there's an element of yourself in the garden. And my friend, you probably know him too, Herman Bruns out in Sycamoose,
Absolutely. We get
lettuce phenomena, where the long May weekend comes along, everybody goes out and plants their garden, and 6 weeks later at the farmer's market, he can't give lettuce away. Nobody's buying lettuce. Everybody's garden is spewing lettuce absolutely everywhere. And 2 weeks later, he's back to selling heads of lettuce to absolutely all and sundry. And that's where the pacing comes in,
right.
of realizing that you only plant some of your lettuce. Next week, you plant a little bit more of your lettuce. Next week, you plant a little bit more of your lettuce. And that way, you have fresh lettuce all season long. And that can't be done if you don't plan your garden, because if you go out there and plant all your seeds and fill up every little bit and every little nook and cranny, where are you going to plant your lettuce next week?
Right. I know somebody who, and I haven't tried this. It's on my list of things to try, where they literally did a salad bed. And so they did arugula and they did lettuce and they did this and they did that. And then they just go out with the scissors and they just clip it.
Oh,
And then and they let it grow and then they go and clip it again.
and I'll take it a step further, is you can add radishes and green onions to that too, because
yeah,
again, they only take a few weeks. So you go up and you pull half a dozen radishes, you know, your 2 or 3 green onions, the lettuce that you've got, stop by the cucumber bed when they're in season, one of those, one tomato, and boom, total lettuce, you know?
yeah,
Yeah, so it's a wonderful way to garden. And in the course, I'll be using this chart that I made a lot, which you can't see terribly well in this, but
Well, but maybe you can flip it around, because if you do join us, and by the way, there are a number of ways in which you can join us, this will be included in your
yeah,
membership. So at the
yeah,
first level, you will get it free shipping for the calendar,
yeah,
which has all these details. So why don't you talk about the calendar for a bit?
yeah. The calendar is, it actually has the chart as well, and it goes month by month. Um, but we actually have a little page that tells you, also, we actually have a little page that tells you all sorts of things to astrological or gardening by the moon, a lot of people call it, and incorporating the beginnings of biodynamics, which is the Rudolf Steiner aspect of things. So this calendar is a way to help you maximize your use of time and energy in the garden. And so each day has, can you see that? Does he stay?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, each day. Yeah.
So each day has a beginning moon sign. What phase the moon is in? Is it in the first quarter? Is it at the full? Is it at, what phase is it in? And what astrological house is it in? And then it tells you when it shifts into the next house. So if it shifts partway through the day, you can plan your activities accordingly. And just as we go through the zodiac, every house within the 12-month cycle, the moon does all 12 houses in that 28-day cycle. So it's only in each house for a couple of days before it moves on into the next set of energy. And so at the front of the calendar, there's a whole list of the right activities to do under those moon signs. And that just gives you such an edge in getting the garden together and knowing what to do with it. The traditional idea of planting on the long May weekend, for instance,
Right.
is not applicable. Like with this calendar, we look at regional, we call them regional indicators. So rather than, the long May weekend or right after Easter, you can we say things like, when the arnica flowers appear, it's warm enough to transplant your brassicas outside.
Now, this is really important because this calendar is on Pacific time. But what we're talking about there, that it gets translatable because those things bloom according to the climatic zone you're in. So
absolutely.
So you can translate it from Pacific time into your time, which we encourage you to do. But the other way to do it also is that these certain things that bloom at this time means you do A, B, C, or D. And it's great to learn that.
It is. And so 3 times throughout the year, we break down some specific regional indicators and how you can catch those things. So, if the aspen ears on your tree in your backyard are the size of a squirrel ears, now you can plant your corn. And the gardening chart that I have is set up very much the same way. So instead of telling you what weekend that you should plant things, it tells you that the nighttime temperature has to be at 4 degrees or at 14 degrees. And that's the temperature you need for those seeds to germinate. And so that's going to vary from place to place. So the constant is the temperature and what day it is. Well, are you in Nome, Alaska or Seattle, Washington, or, or Atlanta, Georgia, And then it gives you the number of weeks to germinate or to harvest. And
that's going to be in their course. So that's part of what you get at the first level at $33 a month. You're going to get this signed by the garden guru herself, and you're going to have free shipping. Okay?
Yeah. And
at the $99, you're going to get all of this sent to you, including shipping, for free.
Free. Yeah. all of it. And for those who really like to keep notes, we've got it in a date book journal form as well. The same information as the calendar, but kind of expanded. So yeah, you get a
Let
lot.
me just talk about the calendar for a moment.
Yeah.
One of the most exciting calendars that I've seen is from a group that is in Northern California, and they've kept a calendar of everything that they've done. And then you can see it from year to year. So you can see what you did last year. This time you can see whether things are advancing faster or slower than last year, what worked and what didn't work. So having a series of calendars over a period of time gives you so much information.
Absolutely.
Because it takes you like what did you say, Sarah? 7 years for your seeds to adjust, if you saved your seeds, for them to settle into your climatic zone. So having an idea of what you did and when you did it from calendar to calendar, from year to year, is really valuable information.
Oh, it's absolutely vital. I have garden journals that go so far back that, I when I go and visit places, I'll pull out a garden journal from, 12, 20 years back and, see what did I plant? How did it do? Is it still there? Is it still thriving? It's really an amazing journey. But no, the journaling in gardening is absolutely crucial. If you don't keep records, you can't put it together at the end of the year. I mean, I honestly know people who have gone out to their garden in the fall and have gone, I can't remember what I planted there. Last year, I had somebody tell me over and over and over again that these were the cucamelons that she planted, and she kept sending me pictures. And when I got there and looked at them, I said, no, those are crystal apple cucumbers. And she said, well, no, I'm sure they're cucamelons. I got you the seeds from you. And I went, then they're not cucamelons because I didn't have those. These are crystal apple cucumbers, like I could tell by looking at them. But until you know your plants, you can't, and even I can't tell
Right.
by looking at a lot of things. I mean, could I tell the difference between laurel frilled kale and deep fringe kale?
No.
Maybe not.
And this goes back to also laying out your garden and doing a map of your garden, and then in the map of your garden, being able to indicate what you planted when and where, so that map then corresponds to your garden journal. I found that invaluable, right?
Absolutely. And when you get deeper into gardening and you're starting to incorporate things like square foot gardening and grid gardening and micro intensive planting, which we cover all of this in the course,
Yeah.
you not only want that map, you actually want to have it so detailed that you know how many square feet of garden space you have, so that you can cut it right down to planning how many cabbages you're going to be able to put in, how many squash plants, and getting that all, the more you garden and the more detailed your garden plans become and the less guesswork there is, actually the more fun the garden becomes.
Right. It's more self-managing almost.
Yeah. And that's what you're striving for. I mean, permaculture, forest gardening, like establishing a piece of property that produces food for you should ideally be relatively simple and straightforward to take care of. It should not have huge times of effort except for here and there. And really the biggest effort, honestly, should be harvest.
Right. So I know that you have a grid, and we didn't put that in the benefits of joining the course, and that is that you have a square garden grid for planting too, right?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we should put that in there as well, don't you think? Or do you make that available for people to buy?
Yeah, no, we can put that in there. Part of the reason I hadn't put it in is because right now it's on a 12 by 18 heavy cardboard.
Yeah.
And I'd like to have it better weatherproofed for
Yeah.
people. And so I'm kind of messing with that. I haven't really offered it for sale, but I'm certainly going to include it in the garden like a guru
Well,
Uh,
maybe we could do a plan for it. Maybe we could do a plan for it in the meantime. Like
yeah.
it's so many, how you do it, right? And send them that graphic so people can make their own on a cardboard in the meantime.
Or we can supply these as part of it. I mean, it's not that I'd like to put it in there. It's just I don't have it listed as a product yet
Right.
because I don't have all of the bugs worked out. But I certainly have all the spacing and all the written information that goes with it.
Oh, great. So that'll be added to it. So if you don't get one sent in the mail, we're going to teach you how to make your own. So
Yep, yep.
that's there as well. And so talk a bit about that. Why is that important, that square gardening? What does that help you do?
Oh, that really helps you plan it out thoroughly. Like if you're going to do the successional planting where say you want to do some carrots and green onions and that, so if you have your square foot garden grid and you know that green onions and carrots are both planted on a grid of 16 plants in that square foot, so you have 4 rows of 4. So that allows you to plot out, you plant your 4 radishes, you plant your 4 green onions, 4 radishes, 4 green onions. Now, when you harvest, it's all going to come ripe at the same time. You're going to harvest that all for one salad, and you now have 1 square foot that you can replant and know exactly what you can get in there. Also, if you want to do this with like companion planting, your cabbage, for instance, is going to ultimately need 1 square foot, but it's not going to need 1 square foot when it's your tiny little
Right.
starter that you put in. So that goes on the grid, that you will put that in the center square that's marked. And then in the grid around that, the next row out, you can plant radishes. And then the next row out from that, you can plant carrots. Now, the radishes are going to come up very quickly. They're going to be harvested in 3 or 4 weeks. That's going to provide room for the carrots, which are growing, to continue to grow. And you might harvest them before the cabbage, but you might not, because although they're in that same square foot, they're not taking up any of the room that the cabbage actually needs. The roots are not competing with each other at all. And so with this grid planting, you can actually cram so much food and herbs into your garden that you can double and triple the production of a garden just by applying the principles.
This is why this is so important, particularly if you're doing gardening on the balcony, right?
Oh, absolutely. Container gardening is really the cutting edge of what's going on for a lot of people in gardening. We've really focused the last few years on vegetables and herbs that do very, very well in small growing spaces, because we acknowledge that people do not have 2 and 3 acre gardens out back anymore. It's not practical.
Right.
It's not how we do it. But if you reach back in time a couple of 100 years, you will find that every single city had massive amounts of food growing right in people's yards, on their balconies, on rooftops.
Mm-hmm.
Every piece and every little bit and area was used. So if you have a 4-foot by 6-inch wide window box on the edge of the balcony, and you plant, a couple, a head of cabbage at each end and a few greens in the center, you're going to get very little food out of that particular box. But if you were to microplant a variety of lettuces, some herbs in there, then some more greens, and you spaced it up, you would not only be able to triple or quadruple the amount of food you get out of it, you could plant it in such a way that you could save the seeds from all those various things that you had planted and spare yourself the money of buying seeds next year, plus having the bonus of having seeds that are getting acclimatized to your own balcony. It's really important. We need to retain that ability to feed ourselves.
So we're going to learn how to save seeds. So I'm assuming pretty soon we're going to be going through how to test the seeds that we already have from last year and how to order what it is that we want for the upcoming season, right? That's going to happen pretty quick, right?
Yeah, I tell people all the time that there's only two, I never give tests in the garden to people. I don't use the garden to test people. I test two things in my garden. I do soil tests and I do germination tests. And
Right.
we're not early enough yet for soil tests. But germination testing is really important. And the reason it's really important is it can allow, properly applied, it can allow you to maximize the seeds. You know, you buy new seeds in the air and they're going to have a high germination rate. In Canada, we actually have minimum standards and we're not supposed to sell seeds that fall below the minimum prescribed germination rate. But some of your seeds from 2 or 3 years ago may indeed fall way behind.
Mhm.
Or the seeds that you yourself have saved, if you don't have a good handle on it yet, they might not have primo germination rates either, but that doesn't mean they can't be used. If the seed has a 93% germination rate, then I know I can that I can plant it very, very sparsely, thin it right out,
Yeah.
and have pretty much everything come up and the row will be full. If, however, I'm dealing with something with a 72% germination rate, I'm not going to throw it out.
Right.
That's madness. That's silliness. I'll plant it a little heavier. If it's only got a 20% germination rate, I'm going to plant it really super heavy, keep an eye on it, and probably find backup seeds somewhere else. You know, I'm
Right.
not
Right.
necessarily eliminate it. And if it's super precious to me, I'll give it a try anyway. I had somebody give me a collection of seeds one time that hadn't been very well stored. And somebody said, well, they can all hit the garbage. And I was like, no, there's 13 varieties of tobacco. I'm going to try them. If I only get a few plants out of each packet, I've still got, you know, these varieties of tobacco. I never toss a seed that I think will have a hope in growing. Like it's, you know, but germination testing is absolutely vital if you want to do a really good job of production in your garden. You got to know what you're dealing with. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about upcoming shows. So we're going to be doing this the first Monday and the third Monday of each month.
Every month.
Every month, and to keep you up to date. And we're encouraging you to, you know, to sign into this course because there's going to be lots and lots of videos actually of us in the garden showing you how to do things. And so we would like to talk about that as an option. So the option number one at $33 means that next, not next Monday, but the Monday after on the show, you will have a special Zoom link where you can come onto the show, which will be an hour show, but at 4:45, the last 15 minutes, because you're a member and on Zoom, you get to get your questions, gardening questions answered first. So that gives you the privilege of being part of the inner circle. You get the answers first, right? Because to hire this wonderful lady would cost you a lot of money. So having that front row seat to ask the questions about you that you want for your garden is a really good asset. So what else are you going to get in this? So let's just go take a look at that. Okay, so the garden circle level number one is you get to join us on Zoom. You get free shipping on the Wise Woman Seed Catalog and the Goddess Date Book, where you keep the record of when you planted things in the garden. You have access to the closed online group hosted on Facebook to get all your gardening questions answered. And you can upgrade at any time to Inner Garden Circle and join the online Garden Like a Guru course. Okay, now the next level at $99 a month, this is where you get all of the above, right? But you get also you get access to the actual course itself, which has all the videos of being in the garden and all the instructions. You also get a 130-minute consult per month with the garden guru herself, worth $130 US a month. And you get one free Spirit of the Land property or garden assessment, which includes geomantic mapping and reporting from yours truly at worth $497 US. And you get 10% off on all your garden related purchases from either the wellness store or the Wise Women seed. So we're going to help you at every stage of your gardening experience. And we guarantee you at the end of the year, you will have a very good overview of how to garden like a group. On top of that, we'll have many guests that will be inviting, and those interviews will be in the course itself. So, for example, we know people who, like Evan Mulder, who knows her herbs like amazingly well. We'll invite her on, and she's going to talk about herbs and how she does her essences, and how you can then do things like my Sarah did, which was make a calendula salve, and how powerful those things are. So we're going to have guests come and join us as part of the course. And we may actually get Michael to join us, and we may go on a few tours. Like there's a wonderful forest garden around here where we live close to. We'll maybe do an outing to a forest garden. And we may go to Wildfly Farm and take a look at what it does it look like to do a big farm organic production as well. So we're really excited to bring you this online course, and we're hoping that you choose to join us. And that's about it of what I could say about why you'd want to do it. What would you say, Sarah? Why would they want to come and learn from us?
Well, because they have a lot of time and money. And, you know, I've seen all sorts of books out there on, books for lazy gardeners, and they make me laugh because I haven't yet met a lazy gardener. Most people love being out in their garden, and if they plan it right, a lot of gardening feels like, fairly fun puttering around. But one of my favorite books in the garden world was called Dirt Cheap Gardening. And I know a lot of cheap gardeners. And, this book was just loaded with ways to save money in the garden. And I snapped it up and never regretted it for a second. But that's what I find over and over and over again, is that what I can save you in the garden is time and money. Seeds are costly, plants are even more costly. I mean, you wouldn't think it because of how much I grow, but I drop 40, 60, 80, $100 in garden centers, more than I should in the spring. I mean, gardening's costly. So learning how to do it without buying things that you don't need, like you go out and buy some fancy thing that you think is going to do it in the garden, and it doesn't. So, you and I can save people a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of disappointment. The saddest thing to me is to hear somebody say, well, my daughter and I were really, really excited to start a garden, and we really had fun, but didn't really grow much for us. We just got a few little things. And I think that's sad. I mean, I'm glad you had a great time, but let's let you have a great time in the garden and come out with such a bountiful harvest that you really do feel your time paid off.
Yeah, and well, yeah, that's what we want you to do. We want you not just to have fun in your garden as recreation. We want you to be able to have what I would call food security. I know that's dear to Sarah's heart and mine. We want you to be able to know where your food comes from. What you can't grow, we want you to know where you can get what extra produce you have, either get it to your food bank or be able to trade it with others that have other food sources. And towards that end, in Christina Lake, we created a whole agri-food network where we were able to tell you what was available at the farm gate level and who was selling what, so that we could do the trade amongst gardeners. So that's another level we may pursue, and it's something to think about. And certainly at your bioregional level, who's growing what? Like, where does your fresh bread, who's doing that? Where does your organic coffee come from? Is there a mill that does your flour in the region? We want to do food security, which is things like being able to order your food in bulk. I remember those days of going to Fed Up Co-op, and having to put my week in there to help do the orders for British Columbia. So, food co-ops are part of this too. So we want you to learn how to garden like a group, but we want you to have it in a bioregional context. So you understand food security. You can help your neighbors work towards the fact that no matter what's happening in the world, that you're going to be secure and have a secure source of food. That's
Yeah.
really important.
And how to do it in harmony with what's going on around you in the natural world and in the community, because you're not going to be able to do that and achieve that in isolation.
So
But
this
it's
is a
all,
community project, right?
yeah, and there's so many little pieces to the puzzle that it can take a long time to get, it work to the point where it satisfies all the needs. But you know, the ability to control our own lives needs to include the ability to produce our own food and medicine. I grew up on farms. I know how you control an animal if all else fails, and that is you control its food.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to see me or other people to be forced into situations where their survival depends on them doing things for other people to give them food. And that includes working at jobs that they absolutely loathe, that are not producing things they want so they can
Right.
afford to eat. We got to ask ourselves at some point in time, why are humans the only animals that pay for food?
Right.
Like, who really owns food, and what are we doing with it? And those are big philosophical questions that I'm sure we'll come back to again and again. But primarily, I think that it is absolutely vital for people's and community survival that we have a really good handle on food and food security.
Absolutely. In the latest UN reports, and we don't want to get down this road too far, but it's important to say at the very beginning, we're in for a real food shortage. It's coming. We know that it's been coming and it's on the horizon. If there's one year that I really encourage you to start your garden and learn how to do it, it's this year. This is really important. This is not just recreational backyard fun and games. This is serious stuff. This is known as your own security for you, your family, your loved ones, and your community. So we encourage you to get involved, and then we're going to help you do it at your local level so that you will have a safe environment for you with safe food. So there you are. I think we're close to having a wrap for the first show. What's the last pearls of wisdom you'd like to leave with people, Sarah?
I'd like to encourage people, to keep tuning in, even if you don't feel inspired to buy into the various levels. I encourage you to keep tuning in, keep paying attention to what's going on in the seed world. But join the course if you can, please. You'll learn so much, and we just have so much that we can share with you and make it worthwhile. We're going to do some exciting tours. We've got indoor gardeners, we've got outdoor gardeners, as Tyhson mentioned, we've got farms and large gardeners. And I'm just excited to share with people all the various innovative ways that there are to, keep themselves food secure.
And I haven't talked to Sarah about this, but I'm going to go right out on a limb and say there's no reason why money should be an issue. If you can't afford the bare minimum, which is $33 a month, then I want you to get hold of Sarah or myself, and we will work out some sort of energy exchange. We're not adverse to having scholarships, but we're going to want to do it as a work exchange, right?
Yeah.
And and who knows, you may have to come and work in one of our gardens. Wouldn't that be just terrible? Learn directly from us.
Yeah, there's a variety of things that can be addressed. I'm a big fan of barter. I'm a big fan of making it work.
Yes.
And so if this is if this course is something that you need, we can help you make it happen.
Exactly. So don't forget that. Mind you, we both like to have groceries bought, and for that we need money. So we can't give it away for free. So anyway, this is just about a wrap. So I'm excited. This is going to be an amazing year. I'm going to learn so much and be able to share so much. And I'm hoping we're going to go see some beekeepers in this as well. And I know Michael knows some beekeepers. I'm a certified beekeeper, and I want to go back and see my bees. I want to hang out with the bees with somebody who really knows about bees. It's one of my favorite things to do. So yeah, that will probably be on the tour as well. So lots of things are happening. If it's got to do with food production, we'll probably touch it somewhere during the year. So that's it for now. Thank you for showing up. I know that there's some questions out there like, how do we deal with slugs? Well, we're going to get that when we get to the slug time in the garden, and we'll get to answer those sorts of questions that you have at that point. So bye for now.
Bye, everybody. Happy gardening.
Happy gardening.